me, but I'm the Dean of the School of Social Sciences, Communication, and Education. Thank you for coming tonight. I feel honored to be the interviewer, and I got that role because I probably know less than anybody in this room about our honored guest, Professor Vera Slezak. And so I wondered about what it was like to be a young woman growing up in Europe prior to World War II. And so I asked if I could ask some questions tonight, and she's graciously agreed to be here. So we feel very honored. Thank you so much.
Hopefully it won't be too embarrassing.
Well, I will not embarrass you. I hope you won't embarrass me. Now, a couple of questions. Tell me what's your earliest memory? What's the first thing you remember about growing up?
You mean very first?
Very first.
There was a dead bird in our garden, and my father, my brother, and I made a beautiful funeral. My father had a speech, we had flowers there. This is my earliest memory.
Did you know your grandmothers?
Yes, only one.
Only one. Tell me something about your grandmother.
My grandmother was the soul of the earth, as you say. She was very brave, she was very diligent, and this is sort of personal. They had a property and there was harvest. And they took food to them, to the workers there. And she took the body and the horse and brought the food. On the way home, she bore a child, my mother's oldest sister.
On the side of the road, literally.
But she didn't come home, so people came and helped her. And my oldest aunt was very healthy.
That doesn't make us contemporary women look good here. When would this have been?
Wait a minute. 1875.
When was your mother born?
1890.
Can you tell us about her? What was life like for her in the first part of the 20th century that she told you about? What stories did she tell you about growing up?
I don't know where to begin. How many hours do I have?
We'll stay as long as you stay.
Well, you mean my mother's childhood? She came from the family of 7 girls and 1 boy. The boy was the apple of their eyes, but he was injured in the First World War. He had a shrapnel somewhere, I don't know the details, and he was suffering terribly. And they used to pray for something. And there is a place, Svati Hostin, where is the Madonna, and they went there and they prayed for him. And he peacefully died. And my grandmother said, this is what they pray for, either health or going to his maker.
How old was he then?
He was then 24.
So your mother talked about her brother a lot. And now tell me, were the women that you knew, your mother and your aunts, were they educated?
Oh yes, well educated. They had high school, and some of them, they went to different schools like they learned to cook, to sew, to clean, to get household jobs and things. How do you call it?
Finishing school.
Finishing school. I don't think they were all very finished. But they were all good housewives, good housekeepers. They were thrifty and they were loving, all of them.
And they were all literate as well.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Yes.
I didn't know anybody illiterate in my country, only one man. I don't think he was illiterate because he was suing everybody and anybody, and he was always his own lawyer. But he pretend he cannot write or read.
Now, you were born before World War II.
Yes.
And so you lived in Czechoslovakia. And I wondered if you could try and paint for us the world before 1939 in your country.
The constitution of our country took for a model the Constitution of the United States. And we were very prosperous. And I didn't know it, only Dr. Sterčo in his research, he told me that at that time Czechoslovakia was on the second place. First place was Sweden, not Spain, not Switzerland. And Czechoslovakia was second, economically.
Okay, so its economy was that prosperous.
Oh yes,
okay.
Because we had every possible industry, and coal mines, and silver mines, and gold mines, and cars industry. In fact, Tatra, no, this was Škoda. Škoda factory for cars was the best, the biggest in the world. Even bigger than here in the United States.
And your family was prosperous as well?
Well, let's say we were middle class. We were not rich, but we were comfortable.
What did your father do?
He worked for the government. And mother did nothing.
Oh, I bet she was busy.
Oh, with 2 kids.
How old were you in 1939?
1939, I was 13.
Tell us about that. Do you remember?
Oh, very vividly. Because this was 1938 already, when the Germans occupied part of the country and the Poles part of the country, and at night we heard cannons, and father was not at home, and mother put my father's fur coat on my brother and something on me, and put a feather bed in a linen, and we left.
You left your home?
Yes. Didn't even lock because he didn't have any sense. And we went to Novi Ichin hoping that we will settle down. But Hitler decided to go further, so we had to leave again. And again, feather beds. Oh, I forgot, a little portable sewing machine traveled with us.
How many times did you move?
1, 2, 3 times.
3 times.
But always with the feather beds and sewing machine.
And always to escape where the German
Yeah.
line was.
Uh-huh.
And what happened after the 3rd time you moved?
Well, then we settled down and stayed in a city where my brother and I attended schools till 1945.
Okay. Now, tell me a little bit about what changed, besides that you had to leave and keep setting up new households, but what changed for you during the occupation years? How was life different for anyone, but especially for you?
It was a change for everybody, because you never knew what's going to happen next day. Like every morning when father left, we were not sure that he will return in the evening.
And he still worked for the government?
Yes. And one evening he didn't return. And my brother's classmate's father he was in the SR, and my mother and I went there crying, and he was in prison, but this father of my brother's classmate took him out of it. So he came home.
Took him out
of the prison.
Of the prison. How did he get him out?
Well, he had the power.
And were you
What is SR, Father? Sturmabteilung. And they were powerful. So.
And he was jailed because, was there a charge?
They didn't have to be a charge, but we know about it because there was a train with Jewish prisoners going through the city, and he knew about it, and they were in these cattle wagons open, and he threw some food there, and this was a big crime because you help the Jews.
Did you see the transports yourself?
I never did.
You never saw?
No.
Were there, I mean, I think I always asked myself, were there rumors, were people talking about some of Hitler's atrocities at the time?
They didn't have to talk about it, we saw it. Because you have to excuse my speech, I had a stroke and it is sometimes. Anyway, a student in the school, he graduated already, and when Hitler came, he escaped to England. And he joined the English Air Force. And his name was Kovacic. And he was beautiful. We were we were taken with him, but he was so much older. And he came down, parachuted, and he was caught. And his former fiancée, her parents, his brother, who was a medical doctor in Sweden, and his pregnant wife was shot. They were shot. And this was not a rumor. It was publicized. And one day, somebody, I don't know who or what, how did it happen? The Gestapo came and they said somebody supplied the underground workers, the paratroopers, with food and medication, and if you don't say who it was, every 10th will be shot. Well, next morning, one of my classmates didn't come. He was shot. Because he confessed himself that he did it to save the school. You know, I hate to say that, but I have to say it. This country is not without fault, but in all the countries I ever lived, never had I have so much freedom like I have here, and I always appreciate it.
Then the war ends. And did you celebrate?
The end of the war?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, certainly. Everybody was dancing in the street, but the freedom didn't last too long. Only 2 years, and the communists came.
Tell us about that. How did that work for you? And now you are in your late teens, right?
Early 20s.
Early 20s. And the communists come in, and how does life change for you then?
Well, in a way, it didn't change too much. The only difference was that at that time, during the war, our enemies spoke German. After that, you never knew because they all spoke Czech.
What do you mean?
You were never sure with whom you speak. Is he a communist? Is he a traitor? Is he what? You know, it sounds ridiculous, but when we wanted to discuss something with my husband, guess where we went? To the cemetery, because there was no danger that somebody will overhear it. Well, I think Father Sebastian can talk about these things too.
So the cemetery was the place where you went to have secret talks and probably romantic talks as well.
No. This was too public. Besides, romantic talk was not too dangerous. We could do it at home. The reason why we did it is because there was a shortage of housing. But for some reason or another, we got a beautiful apartment in new building. And we were ready to leave, and somebody rang the door there, and there was a man in overalls, all overs or whatever, and don't laugh at me. And he said, I came to repair the tiles in the kitchen. I said, this is new, there is no loose tile. We are leaving. And he said, you can leave, I will take the key from the concierge. So I said, okay. After we returned, we didn't find anything. We look and look and look, and since that time we never talk anything dangerous at home.
Because you thought that there
something must be done.
A listening device was there. Now, was this a typical reaction, or were you under suspicion for any reason that you knew of?
I won't answer this question.
Okay. I just wondered if by virtue of your education and your father's working for the government, if that put you under suspicion. That's what I was thinking.
Well, everybody who was not in the party was under suspicion. Mm-hmm. And especially somebody who was religious. And our family was. Mm-hmm. And my mother was stamped as bourgeois woman, danger to the government, because she, before took over, she was volunteering for the Christian Democrat Party, and these were their enemies.
Were you still able to go to church, or was that forbidden?
It was not looked kindly at, but we used to go to my parents' house where we were not so visible.
And you could go to church when you were with them?
Oh, yeah.
Tell us a little bit how you met your husband.
I rather not, because it is crazy. I worked for the UNICEF, and we were traveling, inoculating students and children all around, and he was teaching at the technical college. And he brought the students there, and they were looking at us from the back, and I thought, these mean men, 2 professors came with them. And on Sunday, a friend of mine, she said, we are invited to a friend, because I was to have lunch or dinner with them, and we cannot make it. I said, that's all, Rita, that's all right. She said, but he invited you too. So, innocently, I went with them, and there he was. This was 1st of October, 1950. And next time when we met, we were leaving the city, going to another city, and we danced together. And the 3rd time we met, are you taping it? Don't let Yaroslav listen to it. He said to me, Miss, would you like to marry me? Wouldn't you like you to marry me? And I said, right you are, I wouldn't. But I thought, this deserves punishment. So, 10th of December, he got a life sentence with me.
What did your parents say when you brought Yaroslav?
I didn't bring him because we were in Bohemia, my parents were in Moravia. When I told them, they came to inspect the future son-in-law. And as I said, I was working for UNICEF, and our chauffeur was very kind. From the railroad station to where my future husband was, there was about 10 miles. and every mile he had punctured pneumatic wheel tire. So we came shortly before my parents had to leave again. So my father had a speech to my future husband to treat me with respect, and to me he said, "This is your decision, and don't you dare to come crying to us," because and I didn't. We lived for 58 years happily ever after. He is happy and I am married.
What year did you get married?
What is it?
What year?
1950.
1950. So you met and married fairly quickly.
From 1st of October till 10th of December.
Wow. We call that a whirlwind romance.
I call it a crazy romance. And we saw each other only 11 times in between, because our group was traveling from city to city.
I hope the young people are listening to this. There's too much dating going on. That's the problem. Okay,
well,
now.
Too much dating. Dating was done in our country too. My girl students asked about, and I said, "Oh, I had many dates." "Oh, not you, Mrs. Slezak." But dating was different. You went with a boy, but there were 3 other couples, and you went one day to the movies. Next day you went with somebody else. We didn't go steady, so to speak.
Well, until you met Yaroslav, it sounds like.
I told you, he got life sentence.
So you marry while your country's under communist rule, and you still continue to have discussions in the cemetery.
Oh, yeah.
What were you thinking? Because I know you decided to leave. Tell me your thoughts when you made those decisions.
Well, when you are meeting friends and they say, "Oh, you are still here," and they are so sympathetic, you know that it is time to leave.
So they felt sorry that you were still there.
So something must be, I don't know. So we decided to leave. It was the hardest thing I ever did, because we were very close family, my parents, my brother, but we left.
And did you think you might never see them again?
Mm-hmm. Because we were not optimistic. We didn't think that the communists would ever give up.
Can you tell us a little bit about how exactly you left? I'm asking because I see my students here, and I'm not sure they understand the nature of that closed society.
Well, this is not very much to say. One day we packed a little handbag, put on the best clothing we had. I forgot my jewelry. My husband took some money, quite a bit. We had to travel by train because we were far from the Austrian border. And the only thing I can tell you is the only person who helped us we know under the name of Vladimir. This was it. And we didn't know, is he taking us to the police, or... Fortunately, he didn't.
Did you have to pay him a lot?
And we had a lot of money, check money. And we went in Vienna to the banks, and before us there were some people changing, Swiss or Americans or English changing money. So our turn came, and Yaroslav had about this much check money. And the teller said, "We don't take this." So we were penniless. You know, before that, and I think none of you, even if you say I can understand it, nobody can. I couldn't understand what it is to be hungry. I learned it the hard way.
How did you get across the border? Did you have fake papers? No.
This man, Vladimir, had us in his hands. And we didn't ask where to go, where are we going. He didn't tell us. And it was a risk because I learned it only later from my parents. My mother was allowed to come to visit us. And there was an English group of newspeople, and they found in a ravine a mountain of dead bodies. Probably the smugglers, instead of smuggle them, they killed them and robbed them. So my parents didn't know for quite a while where we were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you know you were going to Austria?
Yes.
Okay, so you did know that. Now, how long you get there, your money is worthless, you're penniless, and you stay there for some amount of time, yes?
From July of 58 to February of 60.
What did you do during that time?
Oh, this is spectacular career. My husband first was weighing cement and things in a factory. I don't know what they produced. But when they learned about his education, he was offered a job as a bookkeeper in a clothing factory. And I was hired there too. I was ironing. And came Christmas, and we had nice boss, Mr. Sutrich. And he said, I will give you some material, you can let it run through the, whatever it is. Piecemeal, something. You know, one person does this, one does the other thing.
Quilt?
No. Yeah, that's.
Okay. Conveyor belt is the answer.
And they can make a coat for him. Mm-hmm. And I designed the coat. And the owner, Mr. Sutrich, said, oh, it's beautiful. It was hunting coat. You may have seen it sometimes. And he said, can I use it? And I said, sure, but I want the first for my husband. So he made it, and then since that time, would you believe, I designed skiing outfit for the Austrian group when there was in Squaw Valley the Winter Olympics. This was my design.
Yay! Wow! And that was a good career for you then. But we should add
I couldn't even know how to thread in the needle.
You're a pretty quick learner then. I don't know if I would have been designing codes. but we should add for people who don't know your husband that he's a physicist. Mm-hmm. So it was a physicist who was given a promotion to do the books. Mm-hmm.
Well, he got another offer in the gymnasium in Reuter in Tyrol, but there was a rule. You had to be a citizen, so he didn't get the job. So this was the second choice.
Okay. Now, you decide to leave again.
My husband decided.
Okay. Why?
Well, because in Austria it was 2 years after the Hungarian Revolution and there was not enough jobs. And I could because I was simple worker, but he as a bookkeeper, he had to have a permission from Innsbruck, working permission. And the doctor there, he said to him, oh, Mr. Slezak, try to get out of here because we couldn't possibly keep you long because we have a couple of other people for the job. So he decided we will go to America. I didn't want to go.
Was that your first choice?
It was his first choice.
America was his first. There were other countries under consideration, I thought.
Brazil and South Africa. In Brazil, in Reuter, there was a spinnerei. big factory, and this owner had plantations and factory in Brazil. And we spoke to him, and he wanted to send him, not me, send him there. But there was some upheaval, and they destroyed the factory so that it went through. Second choice was South Africa. I said, I'm not going to go there. This was an excellent offer. You have to keep in mind, nowadays $1,000 doesn't mean anything. But 1960, $1,000 a month was a fortune. So they offered $1,000 a month to teach at mining college. $1,000 a month, free housing, and something else free. And I said, I'm going to South Africa. He said, I'm going to America. So guess where we ended?
I'm seeing a pattern here. So you came to America. How did you get here?
By plane.
By plane. Okay.
It was plane not for people, just for refugees. It was $90 the flight. We were sitting like sardines. But we made it. We landed.
And everyone was a refugee?
Everyone.
Was it a military plane or?
I don't know. It was a shabby plane. It was rattling. And we flew from Munich to Belgium, from Belgium to Shannon to Ireland, from Ireland to Newfoundland, from Newfoundland to Boston, from Boston to New York. It was...
Wow.
What? Yeah, it was about 16, 17 hours. And it didn't have carpets, just wooden things. It was rattling. The only thing was good was food. But we didn't have any desire to eat. At least I didn't. And some American family adopted a child in Munich. But they were not allowed to, they were not able to pick the child. So the child was sent in the same plane. And I love children dearly. But the child never stopped screaming.
We've all been on that plane. So you come to New York City.
Uh-huh.
Tell me your first impressions.
We got a gorgeous room in the hotel close to Harlem. Gorgeous. Can you imagine? $6 a night. There were 2 bathrooms, one for women, one for men. And we got the job right away in Swing Line, you know, this staple factory.
Stapler company, Swing Line.
Both of us. And we left the house at 7 o'clock in the morning and returned at 11 at night because we went to evening school. And even here again, the young people would wonder. My husband had glorious salary, $45 a week. And my salary was $38. And we managed to save $5 a week. And she's laughing. And one day, Dr. Thornberry, she coached the people, the refugees in profession. She said, a president of College of Saint Vincent called and he wants to interview you. But before that, he had interview in Connecticut and one in Albany, but he didn't like it. And one was rejected because this was Baptist College and they didn't want Catholic at that time. So this gentleman was Father Quintin and Father Roland, and Yaroslav had interview with them, and he had to perform a lecture. By that time we were already fluent. And they took out a paper and he signed the contract right away. And we ended here. Boy, was I unhappy. I never lived in a small town. And Father Quintin said, a friend brought us here in his car, And we slept in Aurelius Hall. I was probably the only first woman who ever slept there. And in the morning we went for breakfast. I remember with Father Roland, and there were little boxes. Do you have some? We said, no, thank you. I didn't know what it was. They were cereals. And Father Quintin said, well, we have to find an apartment for you. So he took us, and we ended on James Street, rented furnished apartment, and Jaroslav started. But I didn't understand some words with Father Quintin said, and he said, do you speak German? I said, oh yes, and I started Jakarta. So Jaroslav started, they had some meetings, and the day before school, I got a call from Father Quintin, and he said, I was in church. Our landlady said, Father Quintin called, and he said he would like to talk to you. So I hopped on the bus and went there, and he said, Mrs. Slezak, we need your help. And I was flabbergasted. And he said, the teacher who was supposed to start tomorrow sent a telegram, he is not coming. And we do not have any replacement. And I know because my education in German was way above. And he said, please help us. So I said, if you have the trust in me, I might help. But after the first class, I was ready to quit.
Was that Mother Renee's class?
No. No, it was Father Mark's class.
It was Father Mark's class?
No.
We all have those students.
No, it was 1960, and unfortunately my first class were intermediate German, and they were 3 or 4 big football players. And I was, how many, 40 years and 30 pounds younger. And they thought, who is this little woman what is she trying to do? They complained to the dean. And the dean, Father Elred was the dean at that time, he threw them out. He said, do as she tells you. And I stuck with it, and I'm glad I did. Because my students, good or bad, were a replacement for the children we unfortunately never had.
You had a lot of children then.
Oh,
you
yes.
had a lot of boys.
Girls too.
25 years ago, we're celebrating our 25th anniversary of women at Saint Vincent. And while some of you remember Saint Vincent before women were students, I doubt that very many of you would remember Saint Vincent before Professor Slezak integrated the faculty.
I was the first one.
Uh-huh. What was it like being the only woman? I mean, the only woman really among the faculty, and there were no women students.
I must say I was accepted quite well. They didn't tell me didn't take me, excuse me, as a woman. They took me as their colleague. I felt comfortable. Did you?
Yes.
No, he made a nasty remark when I walked, clip clap.
So you didn't feel like a pioneer necessarily for women?
Well, in a way, yes. But as far as the acceptance is, no problem.
Now, just to double back and for a couple minutes, your brother stays in
Stayed in Czech Republic.
In the Czech Republic, and your mother. So all of your family stays in Europe.
Stayed.
Mm-hmm.
They are all dead.
How has your life been different, living your adult life here as opposed to those who stayed in the Czech Republic?
The sense of the feeling of freedom, and we didn't realize it until my mother got a permission to visit us. Oh, my mother was a piece of work. Sarah Bernhardt, eat your heart, because she was thrown out from the foreign ministry when she applied for the first time. For the second time, they said, do you have the nerve? Your daughter is a traitor. So she went to the president's office. Well, naturally, the president didn't accept her, receive her, and she talked to a little girl somewhere, some secretary, tears, crocodile tears, and she said, you know, Mrs. Urbanowska, go back and tell them that we send you. My mother marched right there, and she said, I'm coming from the office of the president. They told me to tell you to give me the exit visa, and they did. You know, how stupid. They could have taken the telephone. But you would have to know my mother with a straight face.
I have a feeling I know a little bit about your mother. My last question, and then we're going to take some questions from our audience here. But my last question is, we have a lot of young people in the audience, and I wondered if you would feel like you could share some advice with them. I mean, they're growing up in turbulent times too, Professor Slezak. There's troubles today too, and you know, what advice would you give them for in their early 20s and teens?
You have to have a goal, and you have to stick to it. And sometimes when you are sticking to it, they will be rolled down, but it will come up again. This will be my only advice. And value your freedom here. And as imperfect as it is, it still is freedom. I realized it mostly when my mother was here. This was a hot summer, and somebody walked by. We didn't have air conditioning yet, and we were talking, and we are critical of things here too. And she stopped, she stood up, and she went and started to close the windows. And I said, Mom, what are you doing? Are you cold? Do you have fever? No, but can you imagine if the policeman marched by and he would hear it? I said, well, then he would hear it. Unless he had a warrant, I wouldn't even let him in the house. And she said to both of us, children, you don't know what you have. And I had goosebumps. I started to forget what we have. And she reminded us.
That's really inspiring. Thank you so much. I'm really proud to be here tonight with you.
It is my pleasure, but I don't think I deserve the honor.
We disagree. Yes. Does anyone have any questions for Professor Slezak?
I don't have a question, but I have a correction. It wasn't a nasty remark that I made. It was, in fact, a quotation from Goethe's Faust. Das ewig Weibliche zieht mich hinein. I said that to my class when I heard her high heels creak at the club outside. And the class asked, what does that mean? I said, well, the eternal feminine draws us on. And they laughed. And she interpreted that I made a nasty remark. It wasn't.
Oh, sure.
Do you remember the first moment you felt free, truly free, without having to look over your shoulder?
As miserable as we were, as poor as we were, right after we got to Austria.
And I remember to this day, even though sardines are very good for our health, you can't...
Don't even mention it. Because sardines were 2 shillings, and they were 25 shillings to a dollar. So how many? 12 and a half sardines. And we had it every day. To this day, I cannot stand sardines.
Thank you so much. If there are no other questions, oh, there's one more question from the chief back there. hold on.
You mentioned about how much you were a religious family.
Yes.
Could you comment to us on what your religion did for you to get you through the ups and downs that you talked about? The essential factor it played in your life?
Well, it is not so practice of the religion. It's the feeling that we were brought up in. You leave everything in the hands of God. And when you are down, you will get up somehow. And if somebody thinks that there is a special courage, there isn't. You do what you have to do. You know, my parents were, both of them, they didn't preach the religion, they lived it.
There's another first, I think, that maybe could be mentioned. You are the first woman teacher, and maybe you are the first couple who taught at Saint Vincent. But also, I think your husband may have been the very first person to be a blind teacher. That happened when he was 50 years old, and he was already teaching here a long time. And he managed to teach full-time, even after this tragedy. How did that experience affect your life?
Elliot may comment something to it. Because after he lost his sight for some time, he lived in Boston, he was stubborn. And I said, we had some, I don't remember the name of the person, he was in business department, and he made some estimate, and he said, you know, Jaroslav, if you stayed at home, your Social Security and your Saint Vincent pension will not be taxed. You will get only her salary taxed, and you will be about $1,000 a year ahead. $1,000 a year in 1975 was big money. And Jaroslav said, I don't want to be on the receiving side just yet. So he went for a semester, he got a sabbatical, he went to the school for the blind in Bridgeville, and he started to teach. Thanks goodness for progress, which I hate, for tape recorders, computers, and things like this, because I was inquiring about a Braille transcript of his physics textbooks, and since there is no prospect for it too much, we were said, well, one of the books you send would be about $1,000. So he depended upon tape recorders and upon Dr. Fulmer and Andy Turner and myself to help out. And he developed some tricks, but believe me, it wasn't easy. One day, I shouldn't even say that, maybe I should. He gave quiz, and I corrected the quizzes. And I said, Yari, you have a class of geniuses, everybody has an A. And it was suspicious to me, because he didn't see and he trusted them. So next class I came and gave the very same test. And they were about half F's, quarter D's, and quarter A's. So I came to the class and I distributed. And they were pre-med students, and I said to them, aren't you ashamed yourself to fight with the weapons my husband doesn't have? But let me tell you, if this happens once again, I'll do everything possible to prevent you to go to medical school, because you don't have compassion. This was bad. I didn't even tell him that.
And it never happened again?
Never.
I just, on behalf of many students, want to thank Mr. and Mrs. Slezak. But I want to mention to all of you that in addition to teaching German, you taught Czech at least one time.
Yes, and
Thank you very much.
And he is my star student.
There were two of us.
Yeah, but you are the star, because he lacked 6 credits to graduation. So he took 6 credits in one semester. And I assigned a term paper. And he wrote the term paper, and we had a good friend, they were Polish, and I read it to them, and Stanley said, "Oh, Vera, are you writing your life story?" And I said, "No, this is my students in Czech." It was a side of mistakes like prepositions, they are difficult. You don't know if you use with or whatever. And sometimes a choice of wrong word from the dictionary, just as I did. I would refer to my dear coat and my expensive husband. Because in German there was teuer, dear or expensive. So aside of this was perfect paper.
And we've had, many of our former students have had long-term, very loving relationships long after our student days.
Oh, yes. One of the students, his classmate, my husband had 11 surgeries in Boston, and his classmate, Peter O'Farrell, came to see him every day. Every day. He's not with us anymore. Okay.
Professor Slezak, thank you so much. We're so pleased. We have a little something for you, reminiscent of those that first early one.
Oh, it is not so easy. Not that I am old only, but I am also sick. Oh my God.
Just a small token of being a great person and a great